Welcome to the Ryan Magic Show, beautiful listeners. Today we have the healing couple here with us. We have Jess and Cory, who are two beautiful facilitators and breathwork teacher trainers and breathwork facilitators as well. And just people that have made a massive impact in my life because I learned to become a breathwork facilitator through their RESET Breathwork method teacher training course, which was phenomenal. And I've been using it to be of service since that time. I don't know exactly how long it's been. I think it's been like 18 months to 2 years, somewhere in that range. And it's been life-changing. And I've changed a bunch of lives using that technique. And so I'm really excited to dive into some questions that I'm curious about today and learning from people that have just the most amazing experience in breathwork for your own lives. And also just unique humans that bring a different perspective to breathwork based on Cory being Dr. Cory and having that experience. And Jess, you just being such a beautiful, empowered human. The way that you guys integrate together with your different personalities is so powerful. And welcome the healing couple.
Hey, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. We're happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So the first thing I'd love to dive into with both of you is just to distinguish for my listeners, because I haven't really spoken directly about breathwork as a topic by itself. It's woven in at different times, but I love to just set the tone around breathwork and introduce to the nuance behind the way that you guys do breathwork and why you do breathwork the way that you do breathwork and teach breathwork. And yeah, I'd love to hear first and foremost, like about the RESET breathwork method, how it works in summary, and why you guys have chosen to like teach that, why you want to spread that to the world.
Yes. Let's dive deep into breath. There's so much here, and I want to take a bird's eye view because a lot of people do ask, well, what is breath work? How could that help me? Wait a minute. I breathe all the time. I breathe every single day. So what is really breathwork going to do for me? And that's what I thought over a decade ago when I got into breathwork. I was like, breathing, I breathe all the time.
Yeah.
But yes, we breathe all the time, and we breathe about 20 to 25,000 breaths every single day. However, how many of those breaths are we conscious of? Are we paying attention to? And maybe as you're listening right now, you're like, okay, well, now I'm paying attention to my breathing, but normally I'm not. And that's very common for the everyday person, is that we're not really paying attention to our breath. But when we do, it allows us to become more present and mindful in our life. And I think that's what we all want, is to be more present, to be more connected. And the quickest way is through our breathing. So really, in short, breath work is like two main components: is the simple awareness, the consciousness of the fact that we're breathing and just watching it. And then the second part is controlling our breath, actually shifting the pattern of it and how we're breathing from, which is usually fast, shallow chest breathing. Right. And when we do that long enough, it leads to chronic stress and a whole lot of other health issues. So I see breathwork as like an umbrella. A lot of different breath patterns and techniques and modalities fall underneath breathwork. You can Google breathwork, you could find
Yeah.
so many people think that, oh, breathwork, that just means just like one type of experience, but
No.
there's all kinds of different techniques. And so there's box breathing, there's alternate nostril breathing, and then there's breathing like the RESET Breathwork method that you were talking about, Ryan, and that you've gone through with our certification program. And like, I want to get into like, okay, why RESET Breathwork?
Yeah.
I think that all these different techniques are really powerful and have their own different benefits. But with RESET Breath, it goes beyond just some simple breathing and relaxation techniques, which are really nice. If you do some breathing for like 3-5 minutes a day, that's lovely. And there's benefit to that. However, with the RESET Breathwork method, it's basically like meditation on steroids, or you can think of it as like a workout. Like it's going to take work, and it's going to be intense, and it's going to be deep. It's a journey. And sometimes it actually might not feel so good. But with this particular method, what we're doing is we are helping to, and why we call it the reset breathwork method, is we're helping to reset your nervous system, to actually stretch the sympathetic nervous system. A lot of techniques just address the parasympathetic and gets you into just more of a calm state, which is great. I think it's so needed. But what we're doing is we're intentionally in a safe space, stretching the sympathetic, the fight or flight response. And by doing that and stretching it to a certain peak state, what we're doing is we're actually helping the body find homeostasis, because the body is always looking to heal and the body is always looking to come back into balance. And so when we can do an intense technique like this, I'd love for Cory to jump in and speak to this as well, is that when we stretch it so far, then there's like a snapback effect. And we actually experience, when we hear time and time again, we've led this for tens of thousands of people, is that people say, I feel more calm than I've ever felt in my life. Even if right now, even if you take a deep breath in and you squeeze all of your muscles really tight, like you squeeze your fist, you squeeze all the muscles in your face and you squeeze as tight as you can and you create tension, and then you exhale and you let it go. Feel how good that feels in just one round like that. So that's, in a way, what we're doing with the nervous system is that we're stretching it. We're creating this intentional tension. It maybe doesn't feel good in the moment, but afterwards, like, oh, wow, I feel even more relaxed. And so that's what happens when we do reset breath.
Beautiful. Thank you for explaining that so eloquently. I really love the way that was explained. And to give some context as well, those that are listening have most likely done some kind of breathwork journey, but transformational breath in Australia is not super common. There's around the communities that I'm involved in, there's a lot of some people do shamanic breathwork. There's a lot of biodynamic breathwork facilitators as well. And then there's just random people that create their own flavor of breathwork, but there isn't a huge amount of transformational breath. And the technique for transformational breath is mouth breathing and the 3-part breath, which is quite intense. And I find that people, pretty much everyone that I've facilitated, I might have facilitated 500 to 1,000 people since we stopped. And no one's had a bad thing to say about the technique. Everyone has had, a lot of people have said, this is the most powerful breath work that I've ever done. I've done heaps of experiences. This is the most powerful experience that I've ever had. And I definitely feel that a lot of that's attributed to the level of intensity that doing mouth breathing continuously. And this was one big thing that I got from you guys, until they hit that peak. If you breathe hard enough and long enough, you hit a point where you get the breakthrough, whatever that means for that experience. What I'm curious to find out from you guys is that there are obviously multiple ways on the journey of nervous system regulation and the journey of enlightenment and growth. There's so many different ways to approach that journey. If we bring that into the silo of breath work, there are very contrasting views on intensity versus titration in a really subtle way. Titration being slow exposure over time, and more parasympathetic strategies like biodynamic breathwork is so subtle, and their whole philosophy is you don't want to overwhelm the nervous system at all. I'm curious to know, what do you see from the founder of biodynamic breathwork, for example, Gitan, and his whole philosophy? You guys have the same intention to heal people, the healing couple, and biodynamic breathwork's about healing, but they're very different approaches. And I'm curious to know how you landed on yours and where you think biodynamic breathwork and those more gentle they're still journeys, forms of breathwork fit into the space.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think that, like what you were prefacing in the beginning, is that even though maybe Australia doesn't have that much breath work, there are things are really starting to culminate and spring up. And what I love about it globally is that many different people are trying many different types of techniques, making them their own, and then building philosophies based upon them. And so as far as reset breath versus biodynamic breath, I think that I'm not going to sit here and try to compare apples to apples, because they're not. What I will say is there gets to be a conversation, Ryan, around when people say, we don't want to overwhelm the nervous system. And then it's just a full stop to the conversation.
Yeah.
And I find that to be a little peculiar to me, because I'm like, wait, hold on a second. Like, we're in at least 2.5 million-year-old bodies that have been through multiple generations, and just our mind, body, spirits, our genetics, our epigenetics. I mean, I know for sure that my ancestors, 16 generations down the line, were red-blooded Vikings. Every single one of my cousins have red hair. My last name is Ostroot, and they changed my name when we came over on the boat to the United States, but like, I am a bona fide Viking. And we know, based upon the Viking shows and all that, what that really meant. We were warriors. We conquered lands, right? We did really extreme things. And so for me, when we're talking about like, whoa, a breathwork technique, and we don't want to overwhelm the nervous system, I'm like, what does that even mean? Because I think overall, holistically, as a society, we have become so passive, so pacified, even in some of these techniques. And so if you really want to access your full potential, you're going to have to do hard things at some point. And where I really want to insert the reset breathwork method, and one of the main philosophies behind why me and Jessica created the way that we did, we can get into more of the nuances of mouth breathing and the technique, but I think it's so vitally important, at least for me, as you know, a young man in his 30s, where I felt very robbed by my life experience for not having rites of passage. Moments where I was one thing, went through a transformational process, and then came out as another, regardless of what your belief set is. And I think there is something lost on us, because you look at culture after culture, whether it's firewalking ceremonies, whether that is being bit by crazy poisonous ants, putting gloves on for hours on end. I mean, you name it, there's so many different approaches to it. And for us, why we picked this technique, why we created it, why we're challenging the nervous system, is to honestly do very much that, which is to put not only your body, but your spirit through a rite of passage. And for me, I think there's something so symbolic about that, as well as so healing. And the only way me and Jessica have found it, because we've done all those techniques that you're talking about, and some of them are fantastic, and some of them open windows in ways that are beautiful and subtle and very feminine. And I think that's needed within our society. So I'm not like, nope, it's only reset, none of this other stuff. But if you're feeling the call and you're feeling ready to not only challenge your nervous system, but to really put yourself through an experience where you come out on the other end changed, transformed, different, then the reset breath is for you. And so, yeah, I think there is a lot of stirring right now, because there's a lot of powerful, potent people that are using that language of, we don't want to overwhelm the nervous system. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Because you're robbing somebody of what could even be possibly potential for what the therapeutic window of their nervous system is. And so it's almost this little game of playing small because we're worried about what may happen. And I say, we've been through a lot harder shit as a human species. So let's lay down on the floor and breathe, eh?
That was beautiful. And I couldn't agree more. I've kind of oscillated between the two, like more masculine tools, and then more feminine tools, and then masculine tools, and found a lot of like love and compassion for myself in the more feminine journeys, and then found a lot more power and strength in myself in the more masculine journeys. And see the utility in both of those. But I definitely
go ahead.
Thanks, Cory. One thing that I've noticed is that with there's more feminine breathwork techniques in Melbourne, than there are masculine. And I found that one of the drawbacks of that is that people haven't felt as contained. And I love that, like the golden rule that you taught me of breath is to make sure that people continue to breathe the entire experience through. So that when it gets to the absolute precipice of intensity and hardship and overwhelm, and even like anxiety being present in the nervous system, that being able to hold the intensity of the breath through that gives people that symbolism that you were talking about with, I've transformed, I've gotten to the other side of something that was difficult, and people have always left feeling really empowered with that because there's that containment. Whereas in some other techniques, like me, even as a participant doing some more feminine style, like shamanic breath work, that's very feminine and it's very take your own journey. As soon as it gets hard, I just stop because I'm like, I'm not being contained or led or guided through that experience. And then I'm just like, oh, I really wish I was being held through this and challenged to rise through this experience.
Yeah. And that is definitely more of our approach. And it's not a one size fits all either. And we always say that is like the reset breath, like it's not for everyone. And for me and Jessica, where our journey really started was with more yogic pranayama, even some kundalini for me as well for a few years before I rose to this occasion. And whatever you're feeling called to, I always say, try it, just try it, because what's the worst thing that could happen? And very often, if you find out it's not for you, that's just as beneficial as finding out something that really resonates for you. So try all the techniques before you make a decision. And I agree with you too. Like we may have a more masculine technique. And I guess we've talked about that a little bit and I resonate with that, but I think it embodies so well with the feminine techniques. And so utilizing both of them along your healing journey, I think would gain you the maximum benefit.
Yeah, and I definitely don't feel it'd be fair just to put it in the whole, just categorizing it as masculine, because it usually leads to an emotional release of some kind. So it's definitely touching on that beautiful rupturing of the emotional body and allowing people to feel and access that deep trauma that they haven't felt before. It's not just like an empowerment, let's get hyped and all. Yeah, it's not a hypey technique. It's a deeply healing process. But the containment and the consistency and the being able to hold that intensity through the entire experience is where a lot of the healing comes in.
Yeah, can I say something around this real quick?
Would love you to.
Something I've never said before, which is there is a neurological and emotional pressure that you're creating, and how our nervous system interacts with our external environment is based upon seeing the difference. And so when you challenge somebody with the reset breath, you are essentially amplifying and increasing this intensity, this neurological pressure. And so if you create a stronger emotional neurological experience during that breathwork technique than your past, your nervous system will acclimate to that new experience. And even though that new experience may be hard, may be challenging, may bring you to your edge, you may be feeling all these things that are like not so cushy, soft, and great in that moment. Your nervous system is going to acclimate to that new experience as a new set point. And because it's been done and facilitated in a safe setting, in a guided setting, there is so much healing in that process that I think is overlooked by a lot of people. And like you were saying before, what we've taught you is like you do that again and again and again and again. As a facilitator, you're going to have somebody come up to you and go, hey, Ryan, like this may sound really weird, but I don't even think I'm the same person anymore. Like I used to be so anxious, but I don't even have to think about not being anxious anymore. And that's a really amazing place to be, because then you know you've done some really good work.
Yeah. And I get people coming back with all sorts of amazing benefits. Like I had this lady come to me off the back end and message me, and she's like, I haven't been able to sleep for 6 months effectively. And I just had the best sleep that I've had in so long. And I couldn't go to the toilet properly. And off the back end of this, I can now actually, my bowel movements are improving. And it's just like, it's so interesting for me with a background of trying to be the rescuer in a way, like the unhealthy shadow of that, and trying to have me be the reason that someone changes, and all I'm doing is helping them breathe, and then they're changing themselves. It's a very humbling process. Yeah.
It's empowering. And I know that we're the healing couple, but the way that we see it is that, yes, we are healers, but the definition, we talk about this in our teacher training, because sometimes people have this resistance to calling themselves a healer, because then it feels like, oh yeah, I'm like the rescuer. I am saving people. I'm healing people. And I think that that's a misconception of what true healing is in our society, especially in the Western world, is that we have to look outside of us or look to other people to have them heal us or something to heal us. But what we're really trying to do with the breath is remind you that you are your own best healer, and that you have the things that you need inside of you to heal yourself. And what these clients and these students shared with you is like, they did that. They healed themselves. Yes, you were there to hold this powerful container and to keep them in the experience and to hold the safety and to be permission for them to go deep. But at the end of the day, they have to do the work. We just led a really powerful oceanfront breathwork class here in San Diego. And it was last week, and it was just a really beautiful experience. People like love it. I mean, to breathe out in nature, breathe by the ocean it's so special. And there was a lot of new people that were there. And there were people that went for it. They gave it 100%. And there were some people that gave it like 30%. And here's the thing is, like, one of those people that shared that, I just gave it 30%. He was like, he shared with us, he was actually an MD, and he said, you know what, that was really great. And thank you for the work that you do. But I have to be honest, I only gave 30%. But what I realized is like, whoa, like what would happen if I gave 100%? And I really appreciate how honest he was with that. And it's like, it's just like life. When we give to life and we show up at 50%, in our relationships, in our work, what's going to happen? Yeah, we're going to get about 50% results. We get what we give. And so with like breath work, it's the same thing. It's like, if I give 100% to this experience, I could get 100% healing, 100% transformation. So I see us as guides, but like, it's up to you to do the work, and it's up to you to decide how committed you are to your own healing. And I think that there's nothing more empowering than that. That's what we've seen in so many people is like, wow, I did that. Just me and my breath, nothing else. Like, I have that inside of me. Holy shit. Like how powerful we are as humans, but we just forget the power that's in us. So it helps us to remember.
That's so beautiful. And that when I think of you guys doing breath work over there in the States now, all I do is picture you guys doing oceanfront, cliff top breath works. That's what I'm seeing. Just like, these guys are facilitating hundreds of people in the most epic spots. You guys fit that description so well, that vision.
Yeah.
So I know that you've both done so much healing yourselves outside of breath work as well. I know you've both done a lot of plant medicine in your times, particularly. I can't remember your involvement, Jess, but I know that Cory, you've done a lot of ayahuasca on your journey. And I think a lot of people, that's becoming very popular, plant medicine over here as well. A lot of people are like, I'm so excited to get this experience. And it's almost like glamorizing the healing journey. And what you just touched on, it pulled this topic up of integration breathwork and the integration of breathwork into lifestyle versus crazy glamorized plant medicine experiences. Because I still do plant medicine. I'm very, very selective and nuanced with when I do it and how long I take between times if I do it. I'd love you both to speak to that and just what are your thoughts on plant medicine?
It's definitely been in the ether. It's definitely been in the ether. I just did an Instagram live kind of talking about breath work versus plant medicine, because my personal experience started.
Can we pause on that and just let people know where they can find your Instagram while we're just in the middle here?
Sure. Yeah. So our Instagram is _the_healing_couple_. and you should be able to find us. There's a picture of us, and we'll be right
Is that
there.
where you did that live?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
I did it last Friday, but yeah, where my story started was about, gosh, like 10, maybe 12 years ago. Time's flying, Ryan. And I just imagine, like, I'm a pretty big guy. So I'm like 6'4", about 205 pounds. Like I'm pretty big force. And everyone always says that, like when they meet me in person, they're like, oh my God, you're like huge. So imagine me now. And 12 years ago, I was very sick, had an autoimmune disease called eosinophilic myalgia, where my immune systems, particularly my eosinophils, which like create histamine reactions for like seasonal allergies and that kind of stuff, they were deciding to attack my joints. So I had the joints of a 50-year-old when I was in my young 20s. And so I was really in a tough spot. And on top of that, I was just starting out medical school. And so I was about the same height because I didn't shrink, but I was about 154 pounds. And I was so sickly and really didn't have a lot of options. And I heard through a friend, hey, some of these medical students are going down to Iquitos, Peru, and drinking this thing called ayahuasca. It's like, ayahuasca, interesting. So I looked more into it. And it was one of those things where like one friend did it, and then another friend did it, and another friend did it. And they're like, we think this would be really good for you. You think you should try this because autoimmune disease, your immune system's kind of attacking itself. And so, Ryan, I really never even smoked pot up to that point. Didn't touch a lick of drugs, maybe drank a little bit. And so I decided to go down to the middle of the Amazon for a month.
Whoa.
Fly into Iquitos, hopped on a little motorcycle, took a 45-minute, sometimes hour and a half drive, depending on how muddy the road was, all the way to the middle of the Amazon, right next to the Amazon River. And I stayed at Niue Rao. And I can tell you how to spell that. It's Nihueraw. And it's an incredible center. Couldn't recommend it enough. And I met two amazing people. Met Dr. Joe Tafur, and then I also met Ricardo Amaringo, who was the shaman that ran the facility. And so, long story short, I spent, about a good part of a month there, did well over 2 weeks of ceremonies, somewhere between like 12 and 14 ceremonies. Not back to back to back, but it was definitely like Monday through Friday. And it completely changed my concept of what was possible for my life and made me realize that while I was so sickly, while my immune system was attacking itself, there were stories and patterns from my parents, from my brother, from my father, from my grandfather that were ingrained not just into my nervous system, but ayahuasca let me feel it in my gut. And so I think what was so beautiful about that is this plant medicine became a between. It became a between my healing and also where my physical body was at because of those emotional connections. And so fast forward, like skinny 153 pounds Cory, went back to medical school, started to get healthier, started to incorporate other things, was doing plant medicine, I would say, every 6 months or so through that process. And that was really how my journey started. And so how did breathwork come in? Well, I met this beautiful young gal because her uncle did a build out on one of my medical centers. And then she was taking yoga teacher training. And you had an experience.
Yeah. I mean, I had been practicing breath work for a number of years leading up to that, but yoga teacher training invited me to go deeper with the breath. And at the time, I just met Cory. We were starting to see each other. We were dating, and he was living in Arizona in the States, and I was living in San Diego, California. And we started doing long distance. And as I was diving deeper into breath work, we would have, we're doing long distance. We would, the only time we could talk was really at the end of the day. We'd have like, 3-4 hour long conversations. Sometimes we would stay on the phone. I never done this with anybody, like stay on the phone, like the entire.
You say it's like a bad thing.
No, I was like, I didn't think that to do this, but like we would just stay on the line and like fall asleep. So like it was still on the line, as like through the night. And then I wouldn't hang up until like the next morning at like 8 a.m., but those were the times that we'd connect, and I would share with him my breathwork experiences. It was so powerful for me because up until I'd met Cory, a lot of relationships, I had a lot of trust issues. And I had trouble trusting men, but really I was having trouble trusting myself. And so by me diving deeper with breath, it was opening my heart up to myself and who I really was and who I was as a woman and my own power. And then thus being able to trust Cory more. And so it was this beautiful exploration so early on in our relationship. And so it really just cracked me open to like a whole new level of vulnerability that I'd never experienced with somebody before. And I believe that it really like just amplified our relationship so early on. And so many people would comment. And we were actually in, a couple months into our relationship, we had gone out to New York City. We're out on the East Coast for my brother's college graduation. I remember we hopped in an Uber in New York City, and the guy he just like looked in his rearview mirror and like looked at us, and he was like, "How long have y'all been together?" And we were just like, "Just guess." At that time, it was like maybe 5-6 months. He's like, "Probably like 5-6 years," and we're like, "Try months," and he was like, "No way." And so many people said like, without even knowing us, like your energy just feels married. Like you already feel married. So many people, and still do, say, and we're not married yet, but like, no pressure, my love. But we'll say like, we'll just automatically call him my husband, or vice versa. You just say like, "Oh, your wife."
And we'll tell people like, no, we're not. And then they'll just say it again.
Yeah. We've given up on correcting people. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that
get to the point.
Yeah. It's led to just such depth. And I attribute that to breath work.
Yeah.
Because it opens so much up. And so in sharing those experiences, fast forward in a breathwork journey, because I had experienced so much healing with the breath, so much so that, and I could definitely like go get really into this, but it helped me with my physical health journey where it really saved my life from epilepsy and seizures that I was experiencing. So it's helped me in so many different ways, but it got to the point where I was like, if this is something that has been the most transformational tool that I've ever experienced, then I think it's a disservice for me not to share this with other people. How many other people are suffering, not just from epilepsy like I was, or not just from high anxiety or stress like I was, or trust issues in relationships like I was, but just so many other mental, emotional, physical ailments that if I can heal, they can too. And I want to bring this to as many people as I can. So I decided I'm going to facilitate this work. And so I shared that with Cory of like, I'm going to train and I'm going to become a facilitator. And this is, yes, I'm trained to become a yoga teacher. And I love that. I love teaching yoga, but breath work is what my soul is really here to do.
And to be quite honest, like listening on the other line, like very doctor skeptic, because like the other side of it was like her saying, then I turned into an eagle this one night and I was flying over the mountains, and then I was speaking to spirits. And like for me, rational mind, I'm like, that kind of sounds like plant medicine. That sounds like maybe biochemical process, release of DMT, yada yada yada. And I really, Ryan, thought, okay, either this chick is crazy and I need to get out, or I could dive in and tag along too. So when she said that, I go, can I join? And she's like, you want to join? And I was like, yeah. So my first transformational breath journey was literally in a teacher training.
Wow. So Jess, had you been doing transformational breath before that teacher training?
Yes.
Wow. So the yoga work that you were doing opened that as an opportunity as well.
Right. It had me go deeper. And like I said, I've been doing breath work for many years. I got introduced to it in college, and like there's a Jessica before breath work, and then there's a Jessica after. And that changed everything for me. But it was yoga teacher training that had me like go to the depths with it.
Same thing with me. Like I had tons of experience with pranayama, Kundalini techniques. had been through many different experiences, but like, it's once again this vernacular of like breath work. Like, wait a second, wait, what? It's like, yeah, we've been doing it for, 8+ years up to that point, 9 or 7+ years up to that point. And so, yeah, it was really this transformational journey that made all the difference.
And I'll never forget then teacher training, Cory be like, hey, I'm going to dive in, and watching him go through like his, your first like journey, like a journey with breath, and coming out of that. I'll never forget, like, it was like deer in headlights. And he popped up and he looked at me from across the room, because we were all paired with partners to practice facilitating on each other. And I watched him pop up and like kind of had this look of like, oh, I get it now. And I'll never forget you sharing with me just what came out of that experience, and just like there's a lot of healing with the masculine.
Well, I connected with my grandfather.
Your grandfather.
I spoke with him.
Yeah.
And it was like he was in the room again. It wasn't just like a whisper. It was a whole journey. It was like he was really there, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
And it was just a message of like, you're on the right path, just keep going and don't listen to anything else. And I hadn't had an experience like that since some of my formative journeys with ayahuasca in the middle of the Amazon. So when I popped up, the deer in the headlights for me was, wait a second. Like, I thought I had to go to the middle of the Amazon, speak to shamans, vomit a bunch of times, which is beautiful. Oh my gosh, so amazing. Would never change a second of it. But I didn't realize it was that accessible, Ryan. Like, literally in Northern California, a couple hours from my house, in that experience. And it was just me breathing. And by the way, there was nobody really guiding. We had a sitter who just like watched you breathe, but no one was guiding me. It was just me and my breath. There was no extra process that me and Jessica now have added to that. And for me to have that journey, to have that conversation with my grandfather in that way, it blew my mind, because I'm like, wait a second, this is like plant medicine without the plant medicine. What's going on here? And so then that's when I really bought in, because I was like, okay, I want to figure out and try to connect as many dots as I can with science, because that's what my background is, because there's something here. There's really something here. And I was sold by that.
Yeah. And that's something that I loved. I really loved that aspect of both of your, like your yoga background, Jess, and your science background as a doctor, Cory, when I was going through the teacher training. So if anyone's listening to this, like, I highly recommend doing this teacher training if you want to incorporate breath work, because a lot of people that listen to this are coaches. So they will definitely be open to learning. And I learned virtually, even though I was in the US at the time. But getting to experience and feel the depth of the contrast of your backgrounds and your uniqueness as humans, and both of those flavors get incorporated into the way that you taught. And I think I was a little bit more like wanting to geek out on the science as well. So just hitting Cory with all these questions about the science stuff, just going really in depth into it. It was super supportive, and it made me feel a lot safer to be able to navigate the deeper territories of breathing myself and helping other people breathe. Just getting like your real understanding of what was happening. It made me feel so safe.
No, that warms my heart. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think it really is a big part of that. And we could go into like some specifics, but what I just think about with deep transformational journeys is people get a little uneasy because they're like, wait a second, people are laying on the ground. Some people I've seen videos where people are screaming, emoting all this emotion, like contorting their bodies, like what's happening? And it's like, there is a very contextual explanation for a lot of what's happening. And I think that if that is getting in the way for you, like, come to our teacher training, because I can explain a lot of it, not all of it. Because what's so beautiful also about breathwork right now is it's very much the wild, wild west. Like, there is a lot that still needs to be discovered. And if you want me to drop some cool science stuff right now, I can do it as well. And this is something that you didn't learn, Ryan.
I'm listening.
Okay. So in our teacher training, we talk about like why people can have such deep transformational experiences like this. And yes, it's one part of the nervous system and stretching the sympathetic nervous system and having that snapback effect. There's a lot of other theories too about our bodies essentially creating what's called pressure. It's a healthy pressure within the brain that causes the brain to release DMT, which is also called the spirit molecule, which is also really high in concentrations when you're first born, as well as when you die. And so as of recent, I've been trying to connect with John Dean, who is the formative researcher on DMT. And recently he had a landmark study, and I think you're nodding a little bit, where he has proven in mice that are very genetically similar to humans that if you connect their brains to a meter that can measure DMT and other types of enzymes that are related to that, you give them a heart attack, their brain releases massive amounts of DMT from the pineal gland, from the lungs, and from your cerebral spinal fluid. And so connecting the dots here is what I'm trying to do more on the clinical side, right? Because we experience a lot of people and see a lot of patients or clients, is when you push people to those really intense, extreme moments, I think one of the things that may be happening is you are flipping that switch inside someone's body where they, on some level, think they are going through a death process. And the body then releases massive amounts of DMT, thus creating these really profound transformational experiences. And why I feel like I can say that is because we've had so many people with psychedelic plant medicine experience that come to our class, and they've had other breathwork experience. They come to our class, they really go for it, and they're either raising their hand at the end or coming up to us and being like, man, that was just as powerful, if not more powerful, than some of the plant medicine journeys that I had. I had no idea that I could access that just with my breath. And so, long story short, I really want to start working with John Dean as well as some other CSF researchers to see if we can replicate that mice study in humans, because that would be the next step. And that's what's really exciting about what's happening right now within the breathwork space.
That's super exciting. Congratulations on making that connection and just being the person that you are with your history and background to be able to hold that research. That's so cool, guys.
Yeah.
That's really phenomenal.
Yeah. That's rad.
Yeah. I think it's really, oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Jess.
I would say it's really exciting because there is this exciting component to breathwork being the Wild Wild West. Here's the thing, breathwork has been around for thousands of years. It's nothing new, right? But I think that our world is really waking up to it. Our world is becoming more and more open. And I think that more people are ready, more ready than ever to dive into experiences like this.
Yes.
And so now the research is starting to catch up on, yes, there is benefit to breathing. We're not just, we don't have, it doesn't just have to be an automatic process, but if we're intentional about it and conscious about it, there is massive benefit to this. So I love that the science is really catching up to this. And at the same time, I invite those who are curious and maybe even a little bit skeptical to just take on, like, imagine you're just creating your own research study by experimenting with the breath. Create your own experiment by diving in. And that's what I did. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I was extremely skeptical. But I was like, let me just find out for myself. Because I see some people just waiting on, well, let me do my research on this. Let me get all this data and this information before I even try this thing. But I say, why not give it a shot? I think you have nothing to lose. And let me just experiment myself. Let me go all in. And then you tell me how you feel at the end. Right? I say, you don't have to take our word for it. You don't have to take science's word for it. But if you go all in, then try it for yourself. And you tell me what the results are. You tell me what the benefits are. And that's exactly what I did. And I came out and I was like, I don't care what research studies say. I feel freaking amazing. I feel so calm. I feel true. My biggest breakthrough when I first started breathwork was I feel so much happiness from within. I just started laughing and laughing and laughing in the middle of a breathwork journey. And I was like, I heard a voice that said, this is what happiness feels like.
Mm.
Now, if I had just stayed skeptical and waited for the research, I would never have experienced that. And I would never be here today doing the work that I do if I hadn't just tried it for myself. So I want to just open up that invitation for anyone who is on the fence, or maybe I'm not so sure about this. It's like, create your own experiment.
I love that. And that pivots me pretty seamlessly into your integration and experimentation with this, because I know you guys have practiced breath work so many times for so long now. And I remember when I was asking this question during the teacher training, and Cory's just like, give me a second, I'll be back in a minute. And you just kind of scurried off the camera and came back with a little card that was like an old driver's license or medical card or something with a photo of you. And you're like, this is what I used to look like. And there was this like much less healthier version of you. Like, you look younger, more vibrant, more full in your face. Like, you guys look so great. So healthy. And I'm curious to know, like, how many times if you had to estimate, do you think you've done the reset breathwork method?
Oh man,
this is hilarious because no one has ever asked.
No, well, I mean,
I'm curious.
I'm loving that you.
Yeah, I mean, in the training, I mentioned that, you know, I'm somebody who goes all in. So like, once I knew something was here with this, I started really diving into the research, looking at, you know, holotropic breath work, transformational breath work, researching, reading. And then I just made the commitment. I was like, I'm going to do this for a whole year. I'm going to really take this to the bleeding edge for me, so that I can really communicate to the rest of the world as well as our community, like, what is possible. And so I did it for a year straight.
Daily, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
30 minutes for a day, or a year, every day for a year. And then I'd say after, I was doing it for like probably once or twice a week for another year, at least 1,500, at least, you know, something like that.
The reason I think that's a powerful thing to touch on is that some people are afraid of doing it once or twice. What's the impact? It's intense. I've had my fears. Like, I've had my nervous system resistant to diving in, because I know, especially because I bring a lot of intensity, as you guys would have witnessed during the experience. Like, I go pretty hard with the breathing. That my body's like, shit, man, there's going to be some things that come up during this experience. Yeah. And the fact that you've done it 1,500 times and you're looking younger all the time and healthier all the time, I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful testimony. And I love what you were saying, Jess, about how it was like, what was the effect on epilepsy for you? Like, on your epilepsy? I'm curious.
Yeah. You know, I had gotten diagnosed with epilepsy when I was around 18, 19 years old. And I was a freshman in college at the time. And I started having grand mal seizures, which there's many different types of seizures that you can have. However, grand mal seizures are the most severe, the most intense, and the most high risk. And if you have, and for some people, it's so intense that some people do lose their life from having these seizures. And I was under it, and my neurologist said, you know, they'd done many different brain scans and tests and whatnot. And they said that, you know, we think that the main cause is high stress and sleep deprivation. Because I was really pushing my body to limits. I was constantly grinding, and in the name of success. And I was extremely anxious, and I was running on little sleep, because I thought that that's what you needed to do. Like, it's just keep going, push yourself, grind, like, you know, just do that and you'll be successful. And was I successful in certain ways? Yes, absolutely. And a lot of people were operating in that mode that were around me. So I thought it was normal until I started having these seizures. And the sad part is that initially it didn't wake me up to change, because my neurologists were just saying, well, here's a pill I was prescribed a very common anticonvulsant medication, and that was the answer. That was the solution. And keep going. There was no addressing my lifestyle. There was no addressing the stress or the sleep or the alcohol or the food I was eating. None of it. It was just take this pill and then just keep going the way that you're going.
So crazy.
It was so crazy.
Super crazy. So she met me.
Yeah. But even before I met Cory, fast forward a couple of years of taking this medication, I got introduced to breathwork in 2011. And like I shared, I had never felt so calm in my life. And it felt like this fog had been cleared, because I didn't realize how much I was having trouble focusing. I didn't have mental clarity, awareness, and it felt like this whole fog had cleared. And I'll never forget walking to the grocery store. And it was this grocery store that I'd always gone to. I did my weekly groceries there. I'll never forget the automatic doors opening, walking to the grocery store. And it was almost like the doors of heaven were opening up. Like it was just like, oh. And I walked in and everything just looked crystal clear. And I was walking down every aisle. I just was like smiling at people. I was just like, I felt like I was floating. And I was with a friend and we were checking out and I was talking with the cashier and I was like, I just feel amazing. And she's just like, we're grocery shopping, Jess. Like, what? Why are you so happy right now? But what it did for me was because I started doing it so consistently, I was so hooked. I believe it was rewiring my brain. And it cleared the mental fog for me. It cleared all of the things that I was holding on to mentally and emotionally. Because really the underlying cause of so many physical health issues is the emotions that we store. And so I finally had this outlet to let this shit go, because I was known, and I've learned this from my family, is you bottle things up. And it got to the point where I bottled up so much that my body responded with seizures because it had no other way to express it and to let it go, because there was so much suppression. So by releasing all of that and doing that continuously, and then also in combination with, for me, it was breath work, and then also cannabis, and also particular water filtration system that we have, ionized water, alkaline water, in the combination of those three that allowed me to really heal from the inside out. And now I can say that I am medication free and also seizure free for the last 5+ years. And I bet you if I went back to my neurologist and I told her, that she would not believe me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I had asked after I was doing breathwork consistently and could feel the changes in my brain, I said, could I wean off of my medication? Because there was actually research that was being done at my university, at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, on the impact of meditation practices on the brain and how we can actually rewire the brain through practices like this. So I was like, oh my gosh, this could be like this, a gateway to getting off medication. And she just laughed at me. I was like, just keep taking your medication. You'll just be on it for the rest of your life. And then when I met Cory, he was like, that's just not true. You don't have to be on this for the rest of your life. And so me really diving in more into breath work, and like I said, with cannabis and water, it allowed me to take a totally different path to healing and to where I am today. And I feel so grateful. And my 20-year-old self would never believe that I'm here and that I could feel this good. I was constantly napping. I had very little energy. I wasn't able to function optimally. And now here I am, like I have more energy than ever. I feel younger now than I did when I was 20. Wow. And I really attribute a lot of it to breath work, and ultimately it saved my life.
Wow. That's so crazy. And what an awesome doctor we have here. This is the doctor that we need. We need Dr. Cory. Seriously, I was initially thinking when you told me that the testing came back and you were told high stress, sleep deprivation's the cause. In my head, I was like, oh, that's actually pretty like constructive. Like that's more constructive than the average diagnoses that I hear from people that go to the doctor. And then when you were telling me the other part, I'm like, that's just the same story. Like, get on some medication. But what an amazing case study. Like, and you guys, as the healing couple, healing each other in that beautiful way and just being devoted to this path. I love that so much. There's so much like that I want to talk about with you guys. And I feel like we're going to have to put a big chunk of what I wanted to ask into a different episode in the future around your relationship and whatnot, because it's so inspiring. But I would love to just talk a little bit to bring this home on how you would recommend people could integrate breathwork into their lifestyle. Like, you guys know all the different techniques. I know you, because the RESET Breathwork method is a sympathetic strategy, meaning it's like more intense in the nervous system, and it creates that stretching which engulfs the trauma in a safe way and heals the nervous system and has all these other benefits. And that you, Cory, did it daily for a year, 30 minutes a day. Like, but you also recommend parasympathetic breathing outside, or nostril breathing instead of mouth breathing outside of the RESET Breathwork method. How would you both prescribe someone that's hearing this and going, yes, I'm loving this. I want some of this, to start to incorporate it into their lifestyle?
I love that when you said prescribe. Yeah. Like, so if I were to give somebody, if I could just give, I think it's just like anything when you're on a personal growth journey or a healing journey or a health journey, there's not a one size fits all. But if I am going to speak to the masses, what I would suggest on the whole is doing parasympathetic practices on the daily, practicing that even multiple times a day. And what that can look like when people are like, hey, like, where do I get started? I think there's two practices that I would suggest that are just really, really simple. I say, don't overcomplicate things. Usually sometimes the more simple, the better. Less is more. So two things I would prescribe are breath awareness. And so what I mean by that is just paying attention to how you're breathing. Because for the most part, it's automatic. We don't have to think about, okay, now I need to breathe in. Now I need to breathe out. Imagine if we had to live like that, right? We wouldn't get anything done. So thank God our breathing just happens automatically. But like I was sharing earlier, when we become conscious of our breath, that's how we can tap into what's going on inside. That's when we can become more present in our everyday life. So as you're washing the dishes, as you're on a call, as you're working with a client, pay attention. How am I breathing right now? Am I breathing fast? Am I breathing slow? Am I breathing into my belly or my chest? How am I feeling emotionally? Because your breath, it's connected to your mental, emotional, and physical state. So when you pay attention to how you're breathing, it's going to tell you a lot about how you're feeling. So it gets you to tap into those emotions and just witness each inhale, witness each exhale. And sometimes people are like, okay, that's even hard for me to just pay attention to my breath. Then use this simple mantra. As you breathe in, silently say to yourself, this is my inhale. And as you breathe out, silently say to yourself, this is my exhale. And that'll help you to just pay attention and stay with the breath, and just do that for a few minutes each day. You could just sit with the eyes closed, but I challenge you to just do it in your everyday, usually doing it during the things that are so automatic. And when you notice you're just kind of going through the motions, like washing the dishes or going for a walk, doing that will do wonders. And that's something that I do on the daily.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
It's great. Let me talk about it. I like 2 or 3 minutes in right there. Yeah. I'm serious. I did.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I was also doing it.
I love that. I love it. And I hope who's listening is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, another practice that you can do, because that's just observing the breath, right? Another practice you can do to actually shift and change your breathing is a breath practice that Navy SEALs use in their training, which is box breathing or square breathing. you can imagine yourself breathing in a square. So you breathe in for a count of 4. It's a good place to start. Hold for 4, out for 4, and then hold for 4 at the bottom, and continue just for 10 to 20 rounds. And as you build up your practice, you can expand that square,
Right.
breathing in for 5, holding for 5, out for 5, hold for 5, 6, 7, 8. See how far you can go, but start with 4. And that's going to get you into a deeper parasympathetic state. So those are practices you can do on the daily, but with reset breath, you can do it on a daily basis like Cory did, but I would recommend doing it a couple times a week. Now, if you're like, hey, I've never done a practice like this, my invitation is to join us for one of our classes. Have monthly online breathwork classes so that people, no matter where you are in the world, you can tap in and experience a journey with us, and also experience community. It's so, I love just seeing people come from all over the world, and we can be doing this deep healing together. And so I invite you to explore one of our classes, and you get the replay as well. So you can go back to that recording and start practicing on your own too.
Powerful. Thank you for that. You guys are so amazing at the way that you articulate yourselves from the heart with so much potency. It's just beautiful, and the embodiment behind it as well. Super, super powerful stuff.
This is who we are, Ryan.
Thank you.
This is who we are.
Yeah, I feel
Shut the camera off after this. This is exactly who we are.
I feel it. I feel it. I really appreciate it. One last point of curiosity that still ties into this conversation that I want to ask about is something that you swept. I don't feel like it was given a huge amount of attention, just given the sheer volume of theory that was in the course, but it stood out to me, and I've thought about it very consistently since the teacher training. And that is the difference between the influence of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system on our bodies. Specifically, the fact that there are almost 3 times the amount of nerve clusters in the sympathetic nervous system than there are in the parasympathetic nervous system. And the reason that I feel like it's important is because even though you were talking, Jess, about simple is good, like if it's simple, it doesn't mean it's not powerful. I think the simplicity of most people that are listening to this will know of breath work or experienced breath work. They'll know of meditation or experienced meditation. They'll understand what's going to be more empowering for their life to take action and be courageous and do the things they want to, but ultimately not, because the sympathetic nervous system is survival based and kicks in when we're feeling scared, and it's 3 times more powerful than the parasympathetic nervous system's influence of us. And I'm just curious to hear your kind of perspective on that from a scientific perspective of what because I don't think I explained that very well.
No, you did. It was great. Yeah. I wish we had a diagram so I could show, but let me just try to articulate a little bit more of what I went through with you in the teacher training, which is there is something along our spinal column called ganglia. And it's like you were saying, clusters of nerves. And so depending on where you are along the spinal column, those nerves tend to either auto-regulate or be more in the domain of sympathetic division or parasympathetic division. And like you said so eloquently, like if you're thinking about our nervous system almost as like a tug of war, there is many more sympathetic ganglia within our nervous systems, especially along our spinal column, right? Along all of our energetic root, or all of our chakras, then there is parasympathetic. And it's about 2.5 to 3 times more. And so that's another reason why, for me, backtracking based upon my first breath experience, having that communication with my grandfather, what I didn't describe to you was how freaking challenging it was for me to even get to that point. Because everything that I wanted to do, I wanted to stop. I wanted to make it about something else. I was hungry. I particularly didn't necessarily like the class that we were in, but like I decided to dive in anyways. And so why the reset breathwork method is really meant to stretch your sympathetic nervous system is because if your nervous system is a tug of war, which it truly is, it's either the sympathetic or parasympathetic, and they're battling with each other. And very often the sympathetic does win because historically, like you were saying, we had to run away from the bear. We were in life and death situations all the time. And so it's much more heightened. There's a lot more nerves devoted to it because we're trying to survive as a human species. And so why the reset breath taps into that is because it is so potent. And the unifying principle within the body is homeostasis at the end of the day. So I feel as a physician, as a master breathwork facilitator, if you really want to get to deep states of inner peace and calm, access your sympathetic nervous system, challenge yourself, go through a rite of passage with breathwork, because the homeostatic snapback effect will be that much stronger. And so that's what I would say with it, unless you feel like there's any more morsels that you want to squeeze out of me.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
Always, yes.
That was so well said. That tug of war that you're talking about between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and the ganglia, the fact that there's 2.5 to 3 times more ganglia that are sympathetic orientated versus parasympathetic, that are survival based versus love based, I like to just put it. Is it that the influence of this ganglia, does it determine the power of influence that the hormones that get released have on us? Or is it just like what specifically is the influence of the ganglia on our state?
Yeah. So the influence of the ganglia is to protect us, is to manage our fight or flight response. But as far as the hormonal perspective, so and this is going to be general. So I'm sure some people are listening to the podcast are going to be like, no, that's not exactly right. But like the sympathetic division really is going to be mastering and controlling, specifically the sympathetic ganglia are going to be controlling the release of epinephrine, acetylcholine, and adrenaline, those 3. And so when you get into those heightened states during the reset breath work, you are releasing epinephrine, acetylcholine, and adrenaline. And so you may feel like you're running away from the bear. You may feel like you're having a panic attack. You may feel like you're on the verge of, I can't do this anymore. And that is because the body is releasing those substances. And so what I would say is people go like, well, that doesn't sound like a good idea. Like, I don't know if I'd ever want to do anything like that. Let's bring a historical perspective into this. How many of us as a human species have actually really gone through a real true life or death experience? Like you're on a surfboard and you're getting eaten by a shark, or you're in the Serengeti and a lion chases you down. Not that many people. I think people have gone through trauma, significant trauma, and they've had real life experiences. But the way that our sympathetic nervous system is set up is for those life or death experiences. And I think what happens, Ryan, is that people have micro traumas. I don't want to like lessen the intensity of them, but relative to a life or death experience, people have smaller experiences when it comes to trauma, their past, and there's a summation of those experiences. And the problem is that our nervous system is set up to know the difference. So if these traumas and stuff have accumulated over time, slowly, that is now your new baseline. That's your new set point. And it's not a good place to be, because most people, they don't feel like themselves. They feel disconnected from their body. They don't feel connected to their emotions because they're at that neurological threshold and capacity. And so where the sympathetic ganglion come in is that it's going to create a much stronger sympathetic experience than your past, the summation of those small traumas, so that your nervous system can reset. Because historically what happens is you run away from the bear. And I challenge anybody, I'm not sure if I did it the round that you were in, but go on YouTube and type in like kudu or hadza, like Impala near-death experience. And there is a plethora of videos of impalas that narrowly escape death from a lion, from a tiger, from a predator. What do? Once they're in a safe setting, they freaking lay down. They deep, intense belly breathing for like 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes. There is some tetany, they're twitching, they're shaking, they're releasing all of that pent up emotional energy from that fight or flight experience. And then, God darn it, they pop up, look around, and then trot off. And so what I'm trying to really take here historically as well as neurologically is animals know how to do it. We've just forgotten. And so why do I have to go through an experience like Reset Breathwork? It's because you've had all these little micro experiences, micro traumas along the way, and you never gave your nervous system an opportunity to find a new reset point. And so now you've built your nervous system up to this point where you're just in no man's land. You don't know up from down, left or right. You just know you don't feel good. And so it's about time we had the courage as healers and also people that are seeking healing to trust our breath to the point where it's not going to kill you. It's not going to create any super negative side effects, but you're going to challenge yourself and you're going to create a strong sympathetic response so that your nervous system can finally reset, so that it knows the difference. And that's what's so critical. And it takes courage. It takes a strong individual. It takes trust for you to not only go there, but be guided there. But once you do, people understand and people get it because they're like, oh yeah, all that stuff leading up to that point during breath work, it was all worth it because now I can feel it in my bones that I'm coming back home to myself. I can feel it in my soul that I'm reconnecting back to myself. And I think truly innately, our nervous system, historically and neurologically, has been set up for us to have those experiences. And I've seen it with my damn own eyes time and time again in animals. And I think that they know best. And so we should follow suit. So creating these experiences, activating our sympathetic nervous system is literally a part of nature and human life. And we need to do that at certain points along our journey in order for our nervous system to be in homeostasis.
That was poetry. That was so beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like that is a beautiful point to put a bow on this chat and give you guys the opportunity to send people where you'd like to, because I know that people listening have been blown away by what you've had to share. Where specifically would you like to send people to get to find out more about you guys and your services?
Absolutely. I love to touch on the things that we've already spoken to in this beautiful conversation. One being the breath awareness. So for those who are looking for a place to start or looking for something really simple to begin, and just something that you can do on the daily, I would go to thehealingcouple.com, and on our homepage, when you scroll down, there's a free download. There's a free mindful breath audio to be able to help you to calm your mind and be more present with the breath. It's an 8-minute audio that you can download and just press play and listen to on the daily, or you can listen to it while you're, like I gave the example of doing the dishes, right? So that will really help you to tap into the breath and just witness the power that your breath has and that you have within you. And if you use that audio enough, you'll get to the point where it's just going to become just such a natural habit, a natural practice for you to tap into your breathing. And so I would start there. And it's, like I said, it's completely free. So I invite you to take advantage of that. And then I also mentioned the monthly Reset Breathwork classes. So if you're ready to dive into the journey, if you're open and willing to see what else is possible for you and for your life, if you're ready to release, if you're ready to let go of the things that you've been holding on to and actually heal from the inside out, then join us for one of our monthly journeys. And you can also find that on our website at thehealingcouple.com/events. So you can see what class we have coming up next. And every single journey is different.
It is.
There's different people there every time. So there's a different energy. Every single journey that we lead, there's a different theme and intention that we bring behind it. And then finally, for those, and I know you said that there's many coaches that are listeners to the podcast, and I think I might be a little bit bold for saying this, but with breath work being the number one and the fastest growing movement and trend in the wellness and coaching space, I believe that in the next couple of years, if you are not incorporating breath work into your coaching practice, that you will get left behind. Because people, like I said, people are ready for it. People are waking up to it. People are searching for it. People are Googling it. And if you can be a coach that can bring breath work into your practice, it will take it to the next level, not only for your business and who you are as a coach, but it will also, it increases your impact, the results that you can bring to your clients. It'll allow you to serve at a deeper level. I think there's a lot of coaches that are like, man, like I'm doing good work. I know that I've got a lot of gifts and I'm meant to do this and my clients are getting results, but I feel like I'm hitting like a block. And I know that we can go deeper, and that maybe clients are kind of just getting stuck with the same old patterns. It's like, how do we break through? And you're almost like a coach, like, how can we break through this? And breathwork can be that answer. So if you are ready to up level, not just your own life, but also your business and your coaching, I'm ready to explore the teacher training. And so with that, you can go to our website and there's a tab for teacher training. It's breathwork-teacher-training. And you can learn more about our online certification to become a certified facilitator. And I'll say that, yes, you will have a certification at the end of the thing. And you'll be able to put it in your Instagram bio and be able to put it on your website that you are, that you offer breath work. But many of our facilitators say that this wasn't just a certification. This wasn't just a program or like other programs that I've done, but this was a journey also for myself to go deeper into who I really am. And that's what really sets us apart, I believe, from these other, there's other teacher training programs out there. But what I can guarantee with this program is that you'll go deeper than you've ever gone before. And why that's so important, I believe, is because then you will lead from an embodied place. And if you've gone to the depths within yourself, you can then take others there too. I don't think that there's anything more powerful than that as a guide and as a leader. So we offer training twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. And so if you're feeling called to it, I invite you to check it out and also reach out to us if you have any questions about it.
I would definitely encourage anyone that wants to, that's gone through and gotten to the end of this, awesome stuff, go do one of their breathwork monthly things. So thehealingcouple.com, and you'll just find the link through there. And then if you actually are ready to take your coaching to the next level, just do the certification, because it's pretty affordable and absolutely phenomenal. I personally have found that I do lots of different types of coaching, and breathwork for me is just so powerful to get people into their body where healing happens. Healing can't just happen intellectually. It's a body-based, like what we were just speaking about that whole time, creating that new reset point of creating homeostasis in the nervous system. And what you taught us about the fact that when we're doing reset breathwork method, we're using our what's it called? The aspect that we're pumping.
Oh, the craniosacral pump? That part?
No, way more simple. Way more simple. Just the stomach.
Oh, the belly breath? The diaphragm?
Diaphragm. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're using the diaphragm as such an intense pump that it's going up through the vagus nerve and creating malleability in the hippocampus and creating that opportunity to heal trauma. And like that has just been so phenomenal with all the clients that I've worked with, because the second I get into a session and I'm just like, I'm not going to crack this person, they're just not going to access the emotion. Boom, I'll do 10 minutes of the reset breathwork method. I'll just be like, pause, stop, close your eyes, boom, I'll get my phone out and I'll just play music and I'll be like, we're doing this breath, go. And it'll be in the middle of a coaching session. And then within like 3 minutes, they're crying and they're letting it out and they're accessing that. And there is just, I could talk around circles for 60 minutes, 10 sessions with them and get nowhere, or 5-10 minutes of using the breath work. And then boom, they're straight into their body where they can't help but feel and feel safe in that feeling. So for me, it's just like a tool that integrates straight into any coaching modality that you already use. And you can just pull it out at any time. And also they can be the full session intention. There's a full breathwork session intention. So
love that.
So
and I think the potency behind what you're saying is that so many coaches, I think, are struggling because they're coming from their experience and perspective, and their client has their own experience and perspective. And it's kind of sometimes like oil and water. Even if you have the best intentions, you're super highly skilled in the best techniques. But what you're talking about, Ryan, where it's like literally middle of the session, like lay down, breathe, you're helping them create a body-based experience, but you're also creating an experience between the healer and the client. And you can, like, that creates such a beautiful bond, which now you have a combined context to now do other work together. It literally creates so much trust between you and the client. And oh my gosh, that is a massive leverage point for coaches. And I know they're looking for that. So thanks for sharing that. That's beautiful. I'm so you just do it. They're like, you know what? We're gonna breathe right now. And it's just 10 minutes.
Well, that's what happened in the teacher training too. Like first session, we're just there and you're like, yeah, you're going to facilitate breath work today. It's like, cool. All right, we'll jump straight in then. So you definitely brought that in, bring that energy in of challenging people to rise into their power. But what you said there is such a good point, because even for me, when I've worked with I'm working with a therapist at the moment that's changed my life in a specific aspect of relating that I've struggled with. And he does a lot of internal family systems, which is helping exiled parts come to the surface to feel safe, and then knowing how to navigate all the different parts. And so emotional healing is a big aspect of it. But I haven't yet got that to the trust point after 8 to 10 sessions, or even longer, maybe 10 to 15 sessions, where feeling is acceptable socially within the dynamic with us. And if he'd like put breath work into it, that would have happened in session 1 after 5-10 minutes, because you can't help but feel in the body. So thank you for that.
There's something really fundamental about that. And I'm really proud. I have a lot of pride that you are doing it in that way, just unapologetically, because that's what people really need, you know? And it's like you said, it's 10 minutes. What if you could access that in 10 minutes, not 10 sessions? Not 10 years. And that's really at the heart of it too, is like, we do live in a very fast-paced world and people are looking for results. And so I think in some respect, Reset Breath kind of meets people halfway, where it's like, hey, this is a faster track, but you're going to have to work for it. And you're going to have to really give it 100%. And you're going to have to commit to your breath for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 plus minutes. But the results are right there.
Yeah. And I've found you guys through Alimentum with Preston, Alexi, Stefanos, and Christine Hassler's program, which was the best coaching certification program I'd done up until that point. I've done a lot of coaching certifications. And what I found is when they were teaching all the different techniques, there was a lot of practice coaching in there. But even them as facilitators, breathwork was compartmentalized. So it was like, we're going to use all these tools, but then breathwork separate and something you can do. But oftentimes, like one of the most powerful techniques that I use, that I find to help people feel, is if that, like, help people get into the body, find the place to feel, and then saying, you know, if that emotion had a voice, what would it say right now? And then the moment they speak it, it kind of cracks emotion, but it only works 20-30% of the time, but it's more powerful than any of the other techniques that I've kind of seen or worked with. Kind of just getting them into it. What's the texture and the emotion and the color and all this kind of stuff. If they're not in their body, even if they're getting it and it amplifies it a tiny bit, they're not going to feel still most of the time. So a lot of the time throughout that coaching certification program, people would hit a certain point and just have to accept that the person wasn't going to release the emotion. And it's kind of always like this sticking point that was constantly there, even with the facilitators, with the master coaches. And I just find if I get to that point and I just get people to breathe, it's not compartment, like breath works in the session, but it's like a little, just tiny little piece to bring in. It kind of, it navigates that space.
Yeah. I love that you're doing it that way. You're really making it your own. And I think that's what we as facilitators and master coaches love to see in our students. And yeah, you're making it your own, and you're really like, you're doing some incredible work. Yeah. You're even, the wheels are spinning even for me too, because we do that as well, as like just integrate. It's like, there is no like coaching session, then a breathwork session. Like, I think the nervous system's too intelligent for that sometimes, and people are just too intelligent for that, and they can outthink that.
Yes.
But when you lay on the floor and you breathe in a very powerful way, you can't outthink it. It's a body-based process, and it will unravel. The dam will break, right? The rope will snap. Something's got to give, and something will be either released, liberated, surfaced, and there's nothing else like it. There's no pill, right? There's no plant medicine. It's just you and your breath. So
cool, guys. This has been so awesome. I could keep talking to you guys for so long.
Likewise.
I'm just going to like really put the third bow on it. We'll wrap it up there. But guys, we
have like 5 layers of wrapping paper.
Exactly. So good. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and being the embodied beautiful humans you are. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. Guys, now just jump straight off this. Go to thehealingcouple.com, at least follow these guys, and then sign up for a breathwork, and just do that now and check them out so they're in your vortex and in your field. And so grateful. Love you guys. Love the listeners.
Big love. Thank you.
Thank you.
So welcome.